Okay, so here's going to be a quick history of the Earth, part one. And if you haven't ever, Mel Brooks is great. If you haven't ever seen this movie, It's Good to Be the King, rent it. It's a classic. Okay, so basically, trying to think about the timeline of the Earth, okay, when you're looking at textbooks, reading about it, this is a huge amount of time, and it's broken up into vast epochs and eras, which can be a little hard to wrap your brain around. But we're familiar with 365 calendar day of a year, so that's the way that I'm going to describe this differently. Okay, not using what the geological time scale is that you would look at in books, but using this calendar. Okay, so imagine that the entire history of the Earth is within one calendar year, where January 1st is the formation of the Earth. So 12:01 a.m. on January 1st, okay, it would be the formation of the Earth. So today would be midnight on December 31st, okay? All right, so the timeline. Each day would represent 12.3 million years. Each hour would represent 5,000 years. Each minute, 8,500 years. Every second, 143 years. So when do you think the dinosaurs would have shown up? Like what month? Okay, January, February, March, April, May, June, So put that in your head. When do you think that the dinosaurs appeared? What month? And then when do you think humans appeared? So what month do you think humans appeared? So if you could, just kind of either pop that in your head, what your prediction is, or just jot it down on a piece of paper. So here we are. Happy New Year! The Earth has formed, okay? But the Earth isn't what we think of as the Earth today. Gases that created the sun were very instrumental in creating the planets of the solar system. So these gases formed planetesimals, which eventually formed into the planets. So this happened roughly about 4.6 billion years ago. Okay, 4.6 billion years ago. Now, the Earth at this time is really hot. Okay, it's even too hot to have oceans on the surface. So it's a big ball of gas and water vapor and other noxious gases. And so the Earth from January 1st until March 4th. So that's January, February, okay, up till March 4th. The Earth was way too hot even for water, for liquid water. Now, there was water vapor, but not actual water, liquid water, until around March 4th. When the rain fell prior to this, it would immediately evaporate. And the gases of the atmosphere were very noxious. You've got no oxygen. You got a lot of carbon dioxide gas, carbon monoxide. You've got ammonia, things like that. Okay, so when do we see the first life forms? Okay, well, the first life forms would appear in that same month of March. Okay, and they were called stolamites. They were the first bacteria, and you can see them here. They formed these formations, okay, called stolamites. And they were not even photosynthetic, okay? They consumed chemical compounds as an energy source. So we call those chemoautotrophs, because, yeah, they generate their own food, but from chemicals, okay? This occurred late in March. So there wasn't even any life on the planet for January, February, and most of March. So here you have bacteria, these chemoautotrophs that were dominating the Earth until mid-April. Okay, mid-April. That's when we see the first photosynthetic organisms as blue-green algae, or also known as cyanobacteria. And these organisms are able to take the CO2 from the atmosphere and water vapor, and with the energy of the sun, go ahead and start creating sugars and releasing what gas as a byproduct of photosynthesis? That's right, oxygen. So here's some cyanobacteria if you look at them under the microscope. Now, so that was, okay, mid-April. So we've got May, we've got June goes by, where you've got all these photosynthetic organisms doing their thing on the planet and the oceans. And then in late July, we have significant oxygen that was a byproduct of photosynthesis that builds up in the atmosphere, okay? That's when we see the first eukaryotic organisms. Remember, eukaryotic organisms are organisms with organelles, okay? Organelles, division of labor. And so remember that everything on the planet besides bacteria, because those are prokaryotes, are eukaryotic organisms. So sufficient oxygen in the atmosphere so that the ozone layer could form. The ozone layer then helping to block out the UV radiation from space so that the Earth can cool. So eukaryotes, we're still talking single-celled life forms, are widespread in the oceans. Bacteria start to move on to the land. Okay, so we were talking about late July, so we've got August, September. Now we're into mid-October, and where the eukaryotes and bacteria are dominating the planet. Not for another month, okay, we start to see multicellular life form, okay, mid-November. So multicellular life forms, okay, what you would think of as, we call these flatworms, okay, flatworms. And then finally segmentation, okay, segmented worms like you see on the left. So here's some more primitive multicellular life, okay, jellyfishes. Now we're getting to November 13th, and again we have the protective layer of the ozone that starts to form, so that cooling the planet. Now plants can start to move closer to the surface of the water. More photosynthesis can take place, creating more oxygen in the atmosphere. November 17th, marine invertebrates dominate. Okay, so in the fossil record, it's really easy to find lots of fossils of trilobites, okay, like this here. So going back here, remember invertebrates are animals that do not have backbones, okay, instead they have a hard shell. So think of like lobsters, you know, stuff like that. Okay, so again, there's fossils of trilobites. Now, plants don't leave the waters of the ocean and leave the land. They start to do that late, okay, late November. But these type of plants, they're mosses. They're called non-vascular. So if you've ever looked at a moss cannot grow very tall. They're like real short because they don't have vascular xylem and phloem in them yet. So when you think of vascular tissue, think of your veins and your arteries. So what is transported in your veins and your arteries? Okay, vascular fluid, blood, liquids. Okay, that's why we can transport it around. So the vascular tissue for plants, for vascular plants, is the xylem and the phloem, transporting water. Non-vascular plants, they transported water only by diffusion, which loses its strength as you get further away from the source. So that's why these plants they were dependent upon water, not only because they needed diffusion, but they needed water to reproduce as well. Okay, we're talking November 18th, mid-November. All right, so November 23rd, we start to see in the fossil record the fish appearing, but we call these jawless fishes because they're fish without, a jaw. So what you can think of as a jawless fish today would be a lamprey. Okay, so you see that it would attach to something to feed. Okay, November 27th. Now there's 10% oxygen in the atmosphere. It was only 1% on November 13th. So getting into December, now you have fish with jaws are dominating. Okay, so fish with jaws. Obviously, the one on the right is an artist's rendition from fossils that were found. December 4th, we have the insects appear. Okay, so insects appear and start to dominate. Okay, December 5th, in addition to the insects, we now have vascular plants dominating the land. So vascular plants, again, have vascular tissue. And so if you have vascular tissue, you're not dependent upon being in water because you can transport water. So you can grow much taller and you can move further and further onto land away from the water. So December 7th, again, the insects and the non-vascular plants are dominating. Okay, so insects, they're pretty big back then. Now we have big vascular plants around December 11th. Oh yeah, and now the dinosaurs appear. So if you go back to your prediction as to what you think when the dinosaurs appeared, what month, if you guessed anything earlier than December, then your prediction is not matching the evidence in the fossil record. So what'd you think of, the dinosaurs like the T-Rex? Okay, so they're going to dominate. And they dominate until, for a pretty long time, until December 25th. And again, our best hypotheses as to why the dinosaurs died, okay? No, Santa didn't put them on the naughty list, okay? But catastrophic asteroids bombarding the Earth, therefore causing their demise. But their demise led to opening a niche wide open without predators for marsupials and mammals, marsupials. Okay, so you got the marsupials. Okay, so anything that has a pouch, and then we see primates appear as well. So around December 25th. Okay, so there's primates, super cute. Okay, so remember primates have binocular vision and opposable thumbs, right? Okay. So here we have, again, now the mammals are dominating, like the woolly mammoths. Okay, December 31st, but not until early in the evening, we start to see what is the closest ancestor to humans. Okay, her name is referred to as Lucy. There's her skeleton, and then the rebuilding of what Lucy possibly looked like by following the bone marks on the bones as to where the muscles insert and originate. Okay, you can rebuild what an organism might look like. Okay, so what was special about Lucy that we think that she's the link between our common ancestor, primate ancestor, and moving on to modern man? Well, if you look here, okay, Lucy had a pelvis. Okay, so when you look at a chimpanzee pelvis compared to Lucy's pelvis, it's different, and it allowed Lucy to walk and run upright. Now, sure, a chimpanzee can walk upright, but when a chimpanzee is in fight or flight response, where they're going to run away, they don't do it on two. They're not bipedal. Okay, they go onto all fours. But when we are in fight or flight, we don't go to all fours. Okay, we run. We're bipedal. Also, her brain was still small. Okay, so her brain was still small. It's her hips. That's where we see the change. And again, so it's due to her pelvis, not her brain, as to why we think that she is the missing link. So pelvis good, but the brain is still small. Okay. So when you're walking upright, what does that do? Hey, look, Mom, no hands. So now we start to see more changes. So Australopithecus afarenus, okay, after Lucy. Then we have Homo habilis, which we call handyman. So you can start to see that the brain is getting larger. Homo habilis, okay, was roughly 2 to 1.6 million years ago. So we're getting later at night on December 31st. Brain is much larger, okay, much larger than Lucy's. We also have evidence that Homo habilis used tools to scavenge meat from dead animal bones, okay? Because what's really rich in nutrients inside animal bones? Bone marrow. And to get to that bone marrow, okay, you would need to use a tool to smash it open. So eat the marrow inside the bones. left after large predators finished eating. So they kind of like waited until the lions and stuff were awake, large predators. But size-wise, this is still a little guy. Homo erectus. Okay, now notice how the skull shape is really starting to change here. Okay, 1.5 to 200,000 years ago, tall and athletic by the changes in the skeleton. Looking at the teeth, must have eaten meat as their diet, so getting a lot more energy. Used fire, okay, fire as well. And we start to see evidence of a family unit, okay, because as the brain gets bigger, okay, babies have to be born earlier in the gestational period in order for the baby's head with the larger brain to be able to pass through the women's pelvis, okay. And so if babies are being born much earlier, then that's going to require much more parental care, okay, much more parental care. Homo sapien neanderthalensis, okay, lived 150,000 years ago to 35,000 years ago. This is our species, but not our subspecies, because we are Homo sapiens sapiens. Called Neanderthal man because the first fossil was discovered in Neander Valley in Germany. So what was different about Neanderthal man? Very large, tough human, primarily carnivorous. Okay, so you can see the side-by-side comparison of Neanderthal man on the this side here, the darker skeleton, compared to Cro-Magnon man. Okay, our species on the right here is much more omnivorous, eating both meat and plants, than Neanderthal man, which pretty much stuck to a meat diet. So what's really important here that I'll test you on are the following: the innovations that had to appear on the planet in order for life to have evolved as we know it today. So innovations that changed the world. The first one, photosynthesis. Without photosynthesis appearing on the planet, we would not have the ozone layer, and the Earth would not have cooled enough for life. Multicellularity, okay, division of labor. So when the bigger you get, the more specialization you need. So being multicellular is an innovation that needed to happen. So we can become more efficient, allowing us to get bigger in size, and which allows for larger life forms. Then moving out of the water, okay, so moving out of the water, which we see in amphibians, frogs, and salamanders, is the pelvic girdle. Because when you're in water, the water buoyancy is supporting you, okay. Like look at a jellyfish that washes up on the beach. It's flat because it's the water that gave it its shape. So you have to have more structure, stronger structure, to be able to support yourself on land. So it's the pelvic girdle that we see in amphibians, allowing for stronger leg attachments. You can leave the water, but these guys still couldn't go too far onto land because they needed to stay, their skin needed to stay moist, and they release eggs into water and sperm into water for fertilization, for breeding. Okay, so then we see in reptiles, which move further onto land than amphibians. And what is it about reptiles? They're dry skin to keep in the moisture, and the amniotic egg. Okay, so an amniotic egg keeps the embryo moist without laying it in water. Next, we have warm-blooded and flight. Okay, so feathers, as you can see in the impression here. Okay, the feathers on this hybrid between, the missing link between reptiles and birds, used for temperature regulation. And so being able to regulate your internal body temperature allows you to be out on land longer. So if you think of a snake, Okay, a snake can't move very fast until its body warms up. And how does it warm its body up? It has to move into a sunny area. So there might be a mouse right in front of a snake, but it can't get it because its body hasn't warmed up yet for its muscles to be able to contract fast enough. So because again, reptiles are cold-blooded, okay? Cold-blooded. But we are endothermy, not ectothermy, so endo for inside, so that we can maximize muscle performance. Okay, then of course we see the arrival of mammals, okay, whether we're talking about marsupials or placentals, so giving live birth and feeding babies milk. Also, we have internal fertilization and keep the fertilized egg inside the mother, protecting it from predators, temperature, until birth. But this does require more parental care. And then finally, we see the development of the primates. Okay, so primates, opposable thumbs, upright posture, allowing hands to be free. This lets our brains start to develop larger. Okay, because we have more freedom of how to use those hands with opposable thumbs. And the picture here that I have shows different primates with opposable thumbs. So the second one here is a lemur. So I just put a picture of a lemur here, but this is one of our cousins, our close cousins. And all the way till you see, Sumerian primates, all the primates with the opposable thumbs. Okay, so there are two drawbacks to intelligence, though. It costs a lot of energy. Brain power costs a lot of energy. Okay, remember when we did the sugar versus fat diet? So the twin that wasn't on the sugar diet really had a hard time with complex thought because the brain requires a lot of energy and quick energy. So in simple carbohydrates. And it can also, again, leave us vulnerable, especially in birth, because we have to be born much earlier, requiring more parental care. A human infant can't be left alone, can't even support its head for the first, 3 months. So I got to do tummy time, strengthen those muscles and support the head. Whereas other organisms, like a horse or a cow or a deer, those babies are born and within hours they're up and walking and running and hiding from predators. But their brains aren't as big as ours. Okay, so having a bigger brain, the vulnerability of that, you have to be born much earlier and in the gestational period, and which requires more parental care. All right.